Thank you very much. Yeah, myself, I'm Anil Kumar, and I want to talk about a little bit about more on a experience point of view, and also more on the growth point of view, why the internationalization is important, and why what it means for Angular app developers. So let's get started then. I'm Anil Kumar. I'm based in Berlin, Germany. I'm a senior product marketing manager taking care of developer tools at Localize. I worked as a developer and also technical product manager, now more in a community and developer space. So just want to tell you a quick story why it was 8 years ago. I was traveling in a local public transport with taking a ticket of you just think about like what is reduced fare. What is reduced fare? At that time, I was thinking that a reduced fare means is like, hey, maybe it could be a short trip. If I'm taking like just 2 stops, I don't need to pay a standard fare. I was just like paying a smaller one. I was traveling for a couple of times. I was using this ticket, and I got to know that this is a wrong ticket when a police caught me. Hey, you're traveling with a wrong ticket. Reduced fare means it's for kids. You're not a kid. Pay 50 euros. The reason is I was traveling, but there was no context given. Is this a right wording? There was no information for me. So the amount of text and what context to provide kind of getting to a lot of issues. This is one example. Another one example, again, from Berlin, Germany. During the COVID time, it was in one of the stops. In order to explain people what is the 1.5 meters means, it's kind of a great illustration of like, hey, the 1.5 meters is like a horse distance. And even like in another stop, it's like, hey, 3 small dogs. This is a great illustration of how you can keep user in mind and educate them and provide the right information. Okay, so there are all other examples, more about personalization. I use Notion, and I really like about personalization about how they tell the maintenance time in a more personalized way, where as if somebody is talking to me and informing me the physical experience would give. This is one other example. And this is also from a Stripe, where they're giving me additional text information about why they're using this verification. It gives me more context. And how can we enable, as an Angular developer, it's a job of a translator or maybe a designer or maybe a UX writer. How can we enable this? Let's talk about that challenge. And for example, think about Angular TinyConf. Everything is an experience. For me, I was looking into the website, like this was a perfect thing, because as a audience, what is the single most information you need to get? You're going to get this live stream. That's great. It's the center of the thing. And also, what I really liked about the experience is like it says the EST time. Then I know that this is definitely not my timing. So this is a schedule. This is also a great experience. And of course, you can also make it like more detect your location and make your timings assigned to you. But that's kind of a nice to have, kind of brings you. But this already is solving my kind of a problem. I know that this is a EST time. I need to convert into my time. So it's already giving an experience, a great experience. Thank you. Thank you for the organizers and making this great experience. And now let's move into, now I talked a lot about experience. Now let's move into the language. Why I'm talking about the internationalization and the language, why it's important. More than 50% of all queries on Google are in the languages other than English. I'm talking about other than English, 50%. 50%. Look at the other data. 72% of internet users prefer websites on their native language. 72%. And this is from a Stripe. 74% of checkouts were not translated into local languages when customers elsewhere in Europe attempted to make a purchase. You see here, 72% of internet users prefer websites in the native language, and 74% of checkouts were not translated into local languages. This is like a huge growth opportunity missed for all the e-commerce companies in Europe. So looking into the languages, right? The world language, the how much the globally spoken languages. If you look at here, English is like, there are other languages out there. So how do we provide a great experience for all the users across the globe? And not just only building only English only application. How can we enable our Angular apps to be more ready for global audience? Why global audience? As we saw, like the more the countries your presence is, the more visibility, the more growth opportunity for your business. At the end of the day, you're building a great applications so that you can enhance the experience for wider audience, grow business. And let's take a quick example of how does it feel to a non-English speaking country when you present your Angular app only in English. I just want to give you that analogy, and my mother tongue is not English. My mother tongue is Kannada. I'm from India, so south part of India. It's one of the language where I think more than 44 million people speak this language, and it sounds like Canada, but it's not Canada, it's Kannada. And let me just switch for a couple of seconds. I'm talking about this Angular Tiny conference. So here, Angular Tiny ಸಮ್ಮೇಳನಕ್ಕೆ ಸ್ವಾಗತ. ನಾನು Angular ಅಂತರಾಷ್ಟ್ರೀಕರಣದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಮಾತನಾಡುತ್ತೇನೆ. So what I said now is welcome to Angular Tiny conference. I will talk about Angular internationalization. I said in my native language. I know that definitely most of you said, hey, what are you talking about? It's the same feeling. It's the same feeling when a non-native English speaker or a non-English like known person who's going to access your application, it's the same feeling they're going to get. So how can we enhance this? How can we make this experience great? As I talked about, the more languages we support in our applications, the better the experiences and better the growth opportunity for the companies we work for the business opportunity we look for. And the question is, okay, I understand the importance of the language and providing all the great experience. I understand this, but how can we do this? How can we do as Angular developers? How can we make Angular apps to provide a great experience globally? The answer is pretty straightforward, right? Internationalization, IITNAN, internationalization. So we just have to make our Angular apps or source codes to be internationalized. I have an analogy of what internationalization. Just to give an analogy, if your code is not internationalized, if your code is not internationalized, that means it's like a doll. It's like a doll which is like a fixed. It's not flexible. Like it has the same shoes color. It has the same the clothing. It cannot be changed. It's not reusable. It's fixed. And whereas this doll on the right side, where you can see here, you can change the clothes of this baby doll, and this is a internationalized Angular app or Angular code. So when your Angular app is internationalized, it's flexible. It can adapt into different regional languages and also localized content. So what? Like you say, hey, why I should do internationalization? What if I do? Imagine if you don't do internationalization of your Angular app, if you wanted to create a new same doll, you need to purchase a new doll, and it's a maintenance cost. Imagine we are talking about not one or two languages. We're talking about more than 10 languages, more than 20 languages. If you wanted to support globally, how does it look like maintaining that? It's a lot of challenge, a lot of maintenance work. So that's where you need to start thinking about internationalizing your code. And thinking about same analogy here, you got to look at the ethnic, different region have a different tradition of clothings. And also same thing applies to our content. The way they look at the content of your application will be different in each region. And just an example, like just saying a hello world means a different way, a different wordings in different languages in different way. And how do you enable this? Luckily, like we have a package, Angular localized, the localized package to the rescue, which really makes you so much easier to build internationalized and localized applications. I'm going to show you some quick coding examples later. So for this, I'm just going to show you the example. Like, for example, this is a single a localized application, Angular app, and you can see here as a locale, I got the two languages. Default one is a source language is in English, and the other one is in Russian. And XLF file as my strings here. And also, I have the example application where it's in Russian, and you can see here the source, and a corresponding target content will be here. And at the Angular application, you can see, if I go to one of my HTML, or I can go to one of my home screen, for example, in my home component, you could see here that using the Angular localize package, and I can make my code is flexible enough to adapt into a different language, and also have some default fallback. And corresponding, I can create those translations in my local files, as you saw here. And using that toolings. And moving on to the more details, like if you look at here, like why some of the examples, like for example, this is a Twitter in different languages like Arabic or English, and also in other Asian languages. You see here how the layout changes by also enabling your internationalized code. There's also other challenge. That's one piece of the challenge. How do you manage the design part of it? How do you bring back your designer? You see here there's a layout change. How do you manage that? And also the other example is like you see your Airbnb. Like I'm just switching to a different Airbnb in different languages. Like how the layout changes. How are you preparing your layouts? The design is going to change, and you're going to communicate with the designers, and designers going to have to take care of those things. How are you going to work on this? And how are you going to provide a more context for those UX writers or translators to provide more meaningful content? And this is one simple example about Airbnb. For example, here, it's in a US website. So it's written as a June 6, whereas here in German website, it's like 6.uni. So how are we going to enable this through internationalized code? And this is another example from Slack. You see here how the layout breaks, how layout changes. So how are we enabling our Angular apps to be more globalized, localized? For that, the answer is collaborating with the designers, translators, and a localization manager, where being an Angular developer, you can provide the keys and the translation keys and translation values to our translators. And at Localize provides you more like a screenshots, more context to the translators, so that translators can provide a more useful content. Similarly, a designer can design screen in one language. They can also design and see how that language UI is going to work in other languages using the Localize and Figma plugin. And that way, you already know that how my components I need to take care and how does it going to work on. That way, you take the translation as important and also delegate a lot of the manual maintenance task of handling the translations, providing right content, and designing to the designers and also to the translators. And this is a typical workflow. You get an app. A designer designs a UI, and you as a developer can pull those translations, keys, and values from the Localize and apply it, make changes, and the localization managers can also pass and make the pre-translations from the translators, and translators can be reviewed. And once it's approved, the translations are approved, then again merged back to your code repository. And I can highly recommend a deep dive tutorial on the Angular apps internationalization using Angular Localize with Vine. And Wine also spoke at last Angular Tiny conference, went deep dive, and that's why I didn't want to go through the same example. I want to bring more from an experience and why it's important point of view. And these videos are available on YouTube. I would highly encourage you to take a deep dive. And there is also a step-by-step, a blog, a tutorial mapping through how you can convert your Angular app into internationalized Angular app, ready to be globalized application. And with that, I'm done with my talk. Thank you very much.